The warning had existed longer than most civilizations could remember. On every star chart, no matter the species, no matter the empire, there was a wide, dark region where nothing was drawn. No stars, no trade lanes, no names. Only a symbol burned into the map in harsh red lines, translated into every known language with perfect clarity. Do not enter. Young pilots were taught to avoid it before they learned their first hyperspace jump. Old admirals lowered their voices when it was mentioned. No one could say who placed the warning there. No one could say what lived inside. Only that ships never returned. The Forbidden Zone sat near the center of mapped space, an empty wound in the galaxy's knowledge. Sensors could not see far into it. Long-range scans bent and twisted, as if reality itself refused to cooperate. Probes sent toward the border sometimes vanished. Sometimes they came back as drifting metal, their data cores burned clean, as if erased by careful hands. That detail frightened experts more than total destruction. Whatever controlled the zone did not act like a beast. It acted like a mind. At the edge of the warning, navigation systems began to behave strangely. Timestamps slipped. Distances disagreed with themselves. Some pilots swore they heard faint signals in the static, too structured to be natural, too calm to be a cry for help. The Council classified all such reports and banned further investigation. Curiosity was declared a threat to galactic stability. The map stayed the same. The warning remained untouched. Then the survey ship Luminous Path made a mistake. It was a small vessel, poorly armed, owned by a minor trading alliance that could not afford the best navigational AI, a misaligned jump calculation. Pushed the ship several light years off course. The crew realized the error too late. The stars outside the viewports dimmed, not fading, but sliding into unfamiliar positions. The navigation screen froze, then refreshed with a single blinking alert. Do not enter. The captain felt a cold pressure settle in his chest. Every instinct screamed to turn back. Before he could order a jump, the ship crossed the border. Nothing exploded. No alarms screamed. Space did not tear open. That was somehow worse. The silence felt deliberate. Sensors flickered, then stabilized with impossible clarity. Instead of empty darkness, the screens filled with data. Power signatures, organized traffic lanes, controlled energy fields stretching across distances no single empire could manage. The crew stared in disbelief. This was not a graveyard. This was infrastructure. The ship's communications officer swallowed and tried to send a distress signal. The message did not leave the system. Instead, it was gently redirected, reformatted, and returned with a short notification stating that external broadcasting was temporarily restricted. The tone was polite, professional, almost friendly. Fear turned sharp and focused. Whatever controlled the space knew exactly who they were and what they were trying to do. Minutes passed, and the ship's main display lit up with an incoming signal. No encryption, no threat codes, just a simple visual feed. The bridge filled with the image of a being the crew had never seen before. Pale skin, two forward-facing eyes, a body built for gravity, not void. The figure wore a plain uniform and sat calmly, as if this was a routine interruption, not a historic moment. The being spoke in clear galactic standard. Unidentified vessel, you have entered restricted space. Please state your purpose. The captain could barely breathe. The legend spoke of monsters, of ancient weapons, of cosmic storms that erased fleets. No story had ever mentioned a voice like this, steady, patient, human, though the crew did not yet know the word. The captain forced himself to respond, his voice shaking as he explained the navigational error. He expected anger, expected annihilation. Instead, the being nodded slowly. Understood. Remain where you are. You will be escorted to the nearest safe exit. Escort. The word echoed across the bridge. Moments later, shapes appeared on the sensor display. Not one or two ships, but dozens, then hundreds, then more than the systems could comfortably track. They did not rush, did not surround the luminous path in a threatening way. They simply existed, arranged with perfect spacing, each vessel radiating controlled power far beyond anything the crew had seen before. As the human ships guided them along a precise path, the crew caught glimpses of the Forbidden Zone. Massive structures floated between stars, connected by glowing corridors of energy. Defense platforms rested silently, their weapons dormant but unmistakable. Everything was layered, redundant, prepared. This was not the hurried expansion of a young species. This was the work of planners who expected war and refused to be surprised by it. The captain finally found his voice again and asked the question that burned in every mind. Why is this space marked forbidden on all maps? The human officer paused, as if choosing words carefully. Because we asked for privacy, he said. And because the galaxy does not listen unless it is afraid. The stars shifted again, sensors dulled. The infrastructure vanished from view, replaced by the familiar emptiness of known space. The warning symbol reappeared on the map, unchanged. Do not enter. The escort signals cut cleanly, without ceremony. When the ship finally jumped away, the crew sat in stunned silence. They had seen the truth behind the galaxy's greatest fear. It was not a monster. It was a civilization that had decided its home mattered more than approval, more than curiosity, more than being known. And somewhere behind that warning, humans watched the stars calm and ready. Guarding a driveway the rest of the galaxy would never dare to cross again. The report from the luminous path should not have existed. By every law of the Galactic Council, any data connected to the Forbidden Zone was automatically erased, sealed, or quietly destroyed. Yet fragments survived. Sensor echoes too clean to dismiss. Power readings that broke known limits. And most troubling of all, a transcript of a calm voice speaking perfect standard language, issuing instructions instead of threats. Analysts reviewed the material in silence, their fear growing with every pass. The Forbidden Zone was not empty. It was occupied, organized, and defended with patience that suggested long planning rather than sudden aggression. Whispers spread through research stations and military circles. The old stories no longer fit. This was not an ancient horror or a natural anomaly. This was a species that had chosen to remain unseen. That decision alone unsettled the galaxy. Every known civilization announced itself through expansion, conquest, or trade. Even the most cautious empires marked borders, claimed stars, demanded recognition. Whoever lived inside the Forbidden Zone had done none of that. They had built strength without permission, and the galaxy had never noticed. The council convened an emergency session. The chamber was filled with representatives of species that had ruled space for thousands of years. Their voices were controlled, but the fear beneath them was clear. The Forbidden Zone sat uncomfortably close to major trade arteries. If a hidden power controlled that region, then every map, every border agreement, every military plan was flawed. Some demanded immediate investigation. Others argued for restraint. No one argued that the truth could be ignored any longer. A decision was made to send envoys, not soldiers. Officially, it was a gesture of peace. Unofficially, it was a test. The delegation's ships approached the border slowly, broadcasting identification codes and diplomatic protocols. The warning symbol glowed on their screens, unchanged and absolute. Then, just as before, the transition happened. Space stabilized, sensors sharpened. The envoys found themselves observed, measured, and calmly escorted without ever being threatened. The human response was efficient. The same pale-skinned species appeared on their displays, different individuals, but identical composure. They acknowledged the council's message and accepted a limited exchange. The envoys were not allowed deep into the zone. They were shown only what the humans chose to reveal. That alone spoke volumes. Even what little was visible showed industrial capacity that rivaled the greatest empires. Shipyards hidden within artificial gravity wells, power collectors feeding entire systems, defense networks layered so deeply that the outer ring looked almost symbolic. During the exchange, a council representative asked the question that haunted them all. Why hide? Why erase yourselves from the galaxy's awareness? The human delegate did not hesitate. Because contact always begins with demands, she said. Demands always lead to war. We wanted time, so we took it. The simplicity of the answer unsettled the envoys more than any display of force. Humans spoke of patience as a weapon. They explained how early probes had detected alien empires expanding violently, consuming weaker neighbors, rewriting history to suit their victories. Humanity had looked at the galaxy and chosen a different path. They spread quietly. They fortified carefully. They studied everyone from a distance, while others chased glory. humans prepared for survival. The envoys returned with a message that fractured the council. Humans claimed no desire for conquest. They demanded no tribute. They asked only for their borders to remain untouched. Some council members argued this was reasonable. Others saw danger. A power strong enough to stay hidden for centuries was a power that could not be controlled. Fear turned into resentment. Resentment turned into ambition. Among the council's member states was the Varkesh Dominion, an empire built on dominance and visible strength. Their fleets enforced order through fear, and their rulers believed respect only came from force. To them, the idea of a hidden species declaring space off limits was an insult. They dismissed human restraint as weakness, disguised by secrecy. Publicly, they supported diplomacy. Privately, they prepared a demonstration. A Varkesh fleet assembled near the Forbidden Zone, its size impossible to ignore. Warships bristling with weapons formed precise formations, broadcasting their presence across nearby systems. The message was clear. No space was beyond Varkesh reach. They announced a security patrol, carefully avoiding words like invasion. The council protested, but their warnings were ignored. The Varkesh had decided to knock on Earth's driveway and see who answered. Inside the Forbidden Zone, humans noticed immediately. Their sensors had tracked the galaxy for generations. Nothing large moved without being seen. Human command centers did not panic. There were no hurried orders, no raised voices. Procedures long rehearsed were quietly activated. Defensive layers shifted from passive to ready. Fleets that had never been observed repositioned with silent precision. The humans did not rush to the border. They waited. As the Varkesh fleet crossed the warning line, the same transition occurred. Systems stabilized. Weapons locked onto targets that did not appear on their screens. Confusion rippled through their ranks. Then a familiar signal cut through their command channels. A human voice, calm and unmistakably in control. "You have entered restricted space," it said. "Turn back immediately." The Varkesh commander laughed and ordered his fleet forward. He wanted a reaction. He wanted fear. What he received was stillness. Then, one by one, his forward ships lost power. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply shut down, drifting helplessly as if space itself had decided to ignore them. Panic spread. Weapons refused to fire. Shields failed to engage. Every system answered to something else now. The human voice returned. "This area is not defended by anger," it said. "It is defended by preparation. Leave." The remaining Varkesh ships retreated in chaos, dragging their disabled vessels behind them. No pursuit followed. No final warning was issued. The message had been delivered with precision and restraint. Across the galaxy, observers watched the recordings in stunned silence. A dominant empire had been stopped without a single human ship taking visible damage. The Forbidden Zone remained unchanged on the maps. "Do not enter" still glowed in red. But now the galaxy understood something new. That warning was not a myth. It was not superstition. It was a boundary drawn by a species that never asked permission to become powerful. And the question spreading through every star system was no longer what lived behind the warning, but how long humans would continue to tolerate being tested. The Varkesh Dominion did not admit defeat. Publicly, they claimed the retreat was strategic, a test of unknown technology that had yielded valuable data. Privately, their leaders raged. An empire built on visible power could not accept being stopped without a battle. To them, restraint was an insult worse than destruction. The recordings of drifting warships spread through Varkesh space, shaking confidence and inviting rivals to question their dominance. Something had to be done, not quietly, not carefully, loudly. Across the galaxy, the Council tried to regain control of the narrative. Emergency broadcasts urged calm. They spoke of misunderstanding and the importance of dialogue. But their words sounded hollow. Everyone had seen the same truth. The Forbidden Zone did not resist through brute force. It corrected intrusions like errors in a system, so that level of control suggested a depth the galaxy had never faced before. Fear began to shift. It was no longer fear of the unknown. It was fear of being measured and found unworthy. The Varkesh response was swift and reckless. They authorized a full incursion not into the outer edge of the zone, but deeper. toward the region suspected to contain the human homeworld. This time, they would not posture. They would overwhelm. Their greatest armadas assembled, drawing ships from border wars and internal patrols. Entire systems were left exposed. The gamble was clear. Victory would restore their image. Failure would change the balance of power forever. Human observers watched the build-up in silence. There were no emergency summits, no frantic messages. Instead, human command councils reviewed probability trees that stretched centuries into the future. This scenario had been anticipated long before the galaxy knew humans existed. Contingency layers activated not in response to fear, but to calculation. The Forbidden Zone adjusted its posture. Defensive fields shifted. Traffic patterns changed. The driveway was being cleared. When the Varkesh Armada crossed the border, they expected resistance. They did not expect order. Their sensors showed corridors opening through defensive fields, guiding them forward along precise paths. It felt like an invitation. Confidence surged through their ranks. Some commanders believed the humans were retreating, pulling defenses back toward their core. That belief lasted exactly 12 minutes. Without warning, space itself seemed to lock. Varkesh ships found their movement constrained, not by force, but by altered physics. Drives pushed, but progress slowed to nothing. Weapon systems struggled to track targets that did not appear because the targets did not need to. Human vessels revealed themselves only when necessary, appearing as calm silhouettes around the trapped armada. There were fewer ships than expected. That detail terrified the most experienced Varkesh officers. The human response was precise. Instead of firing, they transmitted data. Schematics of Varkesh ships appeared on command screens, annotated with vulnerabilities no outsider should know. Then systems began shutting down in sequence. Communications first, then weapons, then internal power routing. Entire battle groups went dark in controlled waves. Panic spread as commanders realized the humans were not reacting. They were executing a plan already written. A Varkesh admiral ordered a blind attack, instructing his fleet to fire on any energy fluctuation. The order never reached half his ships. Human countermeasures isolated command channels with surgical accuracy. The admiral watched his authority dissolve in real time. His empire had always relied on centralized control. Humans had studied that weakness long ago. Then the human voice returned, not to threaten, but to explain. "You are experiencing a limited demonstration," it said. "This is the least efficient method we possess. We chose it because it is reversible." Reversible. The word carried more weight than any weapon. Humans were not destroying the Armada because they did not need to. They were proving a point while preserving options. One by one, Varkesh ships were forced into inert drift, their crews alive, their hulls intact, their pride shattered. As the human fleets held position, a second message was broadcast, not just to the Varkesh, but to every listening system in the galaxy. It was a live feed of the engagement, unfiltered. Humans did not hide what they were doing. They wanted the galaxy to see the difference between power used to dominate and power used to control outcomes. The council watched in stunned silence. Some representatives felt relief. Others felt terror. Humanity was not an unpredictable force. It was worse. It was stable. Stable power that had prepared for every likely response. The implications rippled outward. Trade agreements, military alliances, and ancient rivalries suddenly felt fragile. The galaxy had built its balance on the assumption that no one could hide and grow this strong without being challenged. When the last Varkesh ship went dark, the human fleets disengaged. Systems slowly returned to normal physics. Drives reactivated. Life support stabilized. The Armada was released intact, humiliated but alive. No pursuit followed. No demands were made. The message was clear. Humans did not need victory to prove dominance. As the Varkesh retreated, fractured and exposed, the galaxy absorbed a new truth. The Forbidden Zone was not a border of fear. It was a boundary of patience, a line that had been crossed too many times. Inside human space, preparations continued without celebration. The demonstration had served its purpose, but it had also confirmed something long feared. The galaxy would keep testing limits, not out of malice, but out of habit. And habits only change when consequences escalate. Somewhere deep within the Forbidden Zone, layers that had never been activated shifted from dormant to aware. Not weapons yet, safeguards. Because if patience had become a weapon, then restraint was becoming a risk. And the galaxy was about to learn the difference between being spared and being protected. The galaxy did not calm after the Varkesh humiliation. It fractured. Border systems that once relied on Varkesh patrols went silent. Old rivals tested weakened defenses. Trade routes shifted overnight. Everywhere, the same question echoed in different forms. If humans could stop a full armada without destruction, what would they do if truly threatened? Fear no longer pointed inward toward the Forbidden Zone, spread outward, turning neighbor against neighbor. The Galactic Council convened again, but unity was gone. Some members argued that humanity had saved countless lives by choosing restraint. Others claimed the demonstration proved humans could end any war before it began, making every existing power irrelevant. A few quietly proposed the unthinkable. If humans were allowed to remain unchecked, then someday the galaxy would belong to them by default, not by conquest, but by inevitability. That idea found support among those who feared irrelevance more than destruction. A coalition formed in secret, drawing from multiple species and pooling resources the galaxy had never combined before. They called themselves the Continuity Pact. Their goal was simple: force humanity to reveal its limits, not at the border, not in the driveway, it's at the source. The Pact's strategy was not brute force. They had learned from the Varkesh failure. Instead, they launched hundreds of small incursions across different vectors, using civilian holes, false signals, and sacrificial drones. The attacks were designed to overwhelm attention, to force humans to react emotionally, to make mistakes. For the first time in centuries, multiple breaches touched the Forbidden Zone at once. Human command registered every incursion before the first crossed the line. There was no alarm, only confirmation. This scenario had always been the most likely. Fear-driven coordination. Humans had modeled it thousands of times, refining responses not for victory, but for containment. The Forbidden Zone adjusted again, but this time the changes were deeper. Layers beneath the visible defenses began to wake. The incursions did not meet resistance at first. That silence encouraged the Pact. Some ships pushed farther than any outsider ever had. They began to see things no foreign sensor was meant to resolve. Vast hollowed asteroids converted into moving cities. Energy structures anchored to stars, regulating output with delicate precision. Traffic patterns so dense and orderly they resembled living systems. This was not a military state hiding behind weapons. This was a civilization optimized for endurance. Then the inner boundary appeared. There was no warning symbol, no message, just a sudden, absolute stop. Pact ships reached a region where physics refused negotiation. Drives failed completely. Even passive drift ceased, as if motion itself had been denied permission. Crews felt pressure without force, confinement without walls. Panic erupted across their fleets. They had not reached a planet. They had reached a rule. A new signal filled every channel simultaneously. It's not a single voice, but many, layered together in calm synchronization. You have reached the limit of observation, it said. Further access is restricted. A Pact commander demanded explanation, threats spilling from his words. The response was immediate and chilling in its clarity. This boundary protects our home. Beyond it, systems are governed by autonomous authority. No negotiation is possible there. As if to underline the point, something moved. The Pact sensors struggled to describe it. It was not a fleet in the traditional sense. No clear holes. No visible engines. Instead, shapes formed from controlled fields and matter, assembling and disassembling as needed. Human constructs guided by intelligence not bound to a single location. Later analysis would suggest these were not ships at all, but extensions of a distributed defense mind that existed across the entire region. The constructs did not attack. They corrected. Pact vessels were gently but firmly pushed back, their trajectories rewritten, their systems adjusted to survive the withdrawal. Any ship that resisted lost function instantly. Not violently. Precisely. Like a line of code commented out. The Council watched the feeds in horror and awe. Humanity was not defending territory anymore. They were enforcing a principle. There were places the galaxy was not meant to see, not because of secrets, but because of risk. Risk not to humans, but to anyone who misunderstood what power looked like at that scale. As the packed fleets were expelled, a final message was broadcast to the entire galaxy. This time, humans did not hide their intent behind politeness. "We do not seek control," the message said, "but we will not allow instability to reach our home. The outer region, you know, as forbidden space, exists to absorb fear, ambition, and error. It is designed to be tested. It is designed to forgive." There was a pause, and the words that would be repeated for generations. "The inner region is not." The implication was unmistakable. Everything the galaxy had seen so far was restraint, made visible. A buffer, a filter. Earth itself, wherever it lay within that layered system, remained untouched, unseen, and uncompromised. Humans had not built a border. They had built depth. In the aftermath, the continuity pact dissolved in silence. No declarations, no apologies. Member states quietly withdrew, unwilling to explain their actions to populations already shaken by the truth. The Varkesh Dominion retreated further inward, their once proud fleets reduced to defensive patrols. Across known space, maps remained unchanged. The warning still marked the forbidden zone, but now it carried new meaning. "Do not enter" was no longer a threat. It was advice. Within human space, life continued without disruption. Cities rotated peacefully. Trade flowed along hidden routes. Children grew up under skies protected by systems they would never need to understand. Human leaders reviewed the engagement and archived it without ceremony. The safeguards had worked. The house remained untouched. But one conclusion could not be ignored. The galaxy had crossed from curiosity into coordination. The next test would not come from fear alone. It would come from desperation. The layers beneath the driveway were now fully awake, watching patiently, ready to ensure that no one ever mistook mercy for weakness again. The galaxy did not sleep after the inner boundary revelation. It held its breath. Systems once loud with expansion plans turned inward. Admirals rewrote doctrines that had not changed in thousands of years. Scholars argued over language, over intent, over whether humanity was a stabilizing force or a silent ruler waiting for the right moment. The fear had matured. It was no longer wild, it was thoughtful, and that made it dangerous. Desperation does not always announce itself with fleets. Sometimes it arrives disguised as reason. A fringe coalition of minor powers, crushed by trade losses and border shifts after the Varkesh collapse, made a decision no empire would claim publicly. If humanity would not conquer, then perhaps it could be provoked into leadership. If the galaxy could not control humans, then it would force humans to intervene. The plan was simple and cruel. Engineer a disaster so vast that only one power could stop it. They chose a dead system near the Forbidden Zone, rich in unstable stellar matter. Using forbidden technology, they destabilized the star, pushing it toward collapse. The projected outcome was catastrophic, a chain reaction that would consume neighboring systems, millions of lives erased in months. Then they leaked the data, quietly, directly, to human monitoring arrays. Inside the Forbidden Zone, alarms finally sounded. Human command did not argue about whether to respond. They argued about how much to reveal. The calculations were brutal. Intervening would expose capabilities the galaxy had never seen. Not intervening would violate the very principle that had shaped human isolation. Humanity had hidden to survive, but it had prepared to protect. The difference mattered. As the star began to fail, human assets moved. Not fleets, not weapons. Infrastructure. Structures the size of moons shifted position across impossible distances. Energy collectors redirected output measured in stellar scales. The galaxy's sensors struggled, then failed entirely, overloaded by precision rather than power. Observers saw only fragments, star being touched without violence. Gravity reshaped with care. The collapse stopped. The star stabilized, its death rewritten into a controlled burn that would last billions of years. Entire systems were saved without a single visible shot fired. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the impossible became reality. Humanity had not defended territory. It had rewritten nature. The reaction was immediate and absolute. Panic gave way to awe. Awe gave way to surrender. It's not formal surrender, but something deeper. Acceptance. The Galactic Council reconvened for the last time in its old form. Representatives spoke openly now, fear stripped bare. They acknowledged what had been true since the first warning was drawn. Humanity did not need permission. Humanity did not need recognition. Humanity had already assumed responsibility. A message was sent into the Forbidden Zone, not as a demand, but as a request. The humans answered. This time, they did not limit the exchange. A human delegate appeared before the council, not as a projection, but as a presence transmitted through systems that bent space itself to allow the moment. The chamber fell silent. No one spoke until the human did. "We did not hide because we feared you," the delegate said. "We hid because young civilizations burned themselves trying to be seen, chose patience instead." A council elder asked the question that would define the future. "What do you want?" The human's answer was simple. "The maps stay the same." Confusion rippled through the chamber. The delegate continued. "Borders invite testing. Claims invite challenge. We will not redraw the galaxy. We will not rule it. The Forbidden Zone remains not as a threat, but as a constant. A reminder that preparation matters, that restraint matters." Another voice rose, trembling. "And if we fail again?" The human did not hesitate. "Then the driveway will stop you," she said. "And if that is not enough, the house will remain closed." There was no anger in her voice, only certainty. In the cycles that followed, the galaxy adapted. Trade routes shifted away from the Forbidden Zone, not out of fear, but respect. Military expansion slowed. Cooperative defense pacts replaced conquest-based empires. Humanity did not join these structures. They did not need to. Their presence shaped behavior without issuing commands. The warning on the maps remained unchanged. Do not enter. New generations grew up knowing the story behind it. It's not a myth of monsters, but a lesson in limits. Teachers spoke of the species that learned to survive quietly. They prepared so thoroughly, they never needed to prove themselves again. Inside the Forbidden Zone, Earth continued its slow rotation beneath familiar skies. Children learned history that spoke not of galactic glory, but of close calls and hard choices. Humanity remembered why it had hidden and why it had finally acted. Not for dominance, not for control, but because some responsibilities cannot be ignored once you are strong enough to carry them. The galaxy never entered Earth's driveway again, not because it was forbidden, but because it was understood. And so, the maps never changed, not because humans demanded it, but because the galaxy finally learned that some lines are not drawn to keep others out. They are drawn to keep everything alive.